My name is Mike Thomas, and I'm the Everyday Consciousness Coach. I like what you said, Danielle, about dreaming big. And we both share that training in integrative coaching and also being TRE providers, tension and trauma releasing exercises. A big role that I have in the overall branch of stress management in the mind, the brain, the body, and the nervous system is getting to know ourselves. And if you see any of my writings that I often write about personal growth, the tagline I have at the end is know yourself and be empowered. And so a lot of what I do is helping people to educate themselves on how the mind can focus attention in a way that helps the brain and the nervous system function optimally. And the body can work at its best. And what we've discovered through polyvagal theory, which is what this chart here is all about, is that the multiple branches of the vagus nerve innervate all these different parts of our nervous system, allowing us to step into our greatness, to dream big. So when we're down here in the lower end of a stress response, what happens is we perceive safety in our bodies, and that allows every other part to work its best. Our blood flow goes into our internal organs. Our immune system is working at its best. And when we're in that space, we can also socially engage with one another more effectively. We can regulate our emotions. We can do all of these things that make being a human being great. We can be creative. We can be collaborative. We can think ahead. We can control impulses. These are all things that can happen when we reduce our stress response. When we start to get up into a survival response, the first branch where we get into a more stress state, or the sympathetic, or maybe even called the fight or flight response, depending on what you're familiar with, we start to need to move. We have a sense of fear, primarily in our bodies, but also in our minds. And it turns out to be is that our minds actually go to the states they go to as a result of the state of our bodies. So when we can tune into our bodies and reduce that stress response, we can reduce all of those tendencies to be more animal-like, more childlike in the immature way. There are plenty of positive qualities of being a child, but the less mature parts of ourselves come out when our stress response goes up. So piggybacking a little bit on what Alyssa said around the healing process, that's what led me to doing all of these things, is I had some pretty severe early childhood trauma, and I thought that I was stupid, to be plain about it. My brain didn't function right because my stress response was through the roof. And what I didn't realize is, at the time, I was in a trauma response, and I thought I was just hyperactive and spaced out, and that was just me. That was my personality. As it turns out, over this lifetime journey of healing, it turns out what was going on is my brain, my body, my nervous system were just exhibiting a stress response. And so my emotions were out of whack. My body wasn't functioning well. I had epilepsy for a solid 4 years. My appendix ruptured. I had aches and pains and chronic tension. You wouldn't believe some of the things that my body did to try and keep myself safe. And so what this led me to is some of the main modalities that I teach eventually here at Airmid Wellness, brain health coaching, where I help people to assess what their specific brain type is. And when you get clear on what your brain type is, you get a more clear idea of what habits will support your brain to be more balanced. So for example, brain type 1 is called the balanced brain type. And all the areas that are supposed to be calm are calm, and all the areas of the brain that are supposed to be active are active. But then you get to, let's say, brain type 2, where it's called the spontaneous brain type, where the prefrontals are low in activity. And as it turns out, that's because there's a huge stress response going on inside the body, which takes us all the way to the top of the chart here, where, as I mentioned before, I was a bit of a space cadet when I was a kid. That was a freeze response. It turns out that wasn't ADHD like I thought it was. And often things will get misdiagnosed when our stress levels are high because we exhibit all of these symptoms of dysfunction in our minds and our bodies when we have a high stress response. So the way to support that particular brain type is having more protein, to have a structure in place so that the brain doesn't have to work so hard, so it can gradually come back online on the cortex, in the prefrontal cortex, and to do things that are very creative, and hence being called the spontaneous brain type. They're incredibly creative, but they also can procrastinate and be spaced out and forget things and have trouble with their impulse control. So that's just one of many brain types. I have a combination between 2, 4, and 5, 4 being the sensitive brain type and 5 being the cautious. So there's anxiety that goes with that. But these are all different types that require different supports in what you do with your body, what you do with your mind, what you eat, and how you approach your own personal healing journey. So I'm a certified brain health coach through the Airmid clinics, and what they do is they use SPECT scanning to measure the blood flow in different parts of the brain. And my job as a brain health coach is to bring that tool to you without having to go get the scan. So I have a questionnaire that you can take. There's a free one online. That's a very general one. And then there's one you can get from me, and I can help you assess what the SPECT scan would say. And so then you'll know the map to better regulate your nervous system and your brain so that you can be as balanced and utilize your gifts. Like I was saying in brain type 2, yeah, they may be spacey, but they're also incredibly creative. Let's reduce the weaknesses and let's amplify the strengths. And that's what I help people to do. So the other two major things that I do, other than help people with their bodies and their breath and their alignment, where I started in this whole career was actually in personal training. So I can help people with that aspect too. If you're interested, please ask me later. So the other two are Tai Chi and TRE. You might say that Tai Chi is a way of consciously releasing stress from the nervous system because you're choosing to move in these relaxed ways. You're choosing to modulate your breath. You're choosing to focus in on your sensations in a particular way to help redraw your map that might be slightly askew, which is where dysfunction comes from when our map doesn't quite meet the territory of our experience, right? We can redraw that map in a way where we become more aware. We can start to recognize, oh, I have chronic tension here. I didn't notice that before. It was numb. And so Tai Chi is basically learning to move and breathe in a way that simulates water. It's this flowing experience where we learn to allow our bodies to release the tension that's held on an unconscious level. And we do this by reconnecting to how to move while relaxed. So it's a load of fun, and currently it's online, so I do group classes that way. And as well, I also do one-on-one coaching through Zoom. Now, TRE, you might think of if the Tai Chi is the unconscious way of releasing that tension. TRE is like unconsciously releasing the tension. Conscious in Tai Chi, unconscious in TRE. And the way that happens is our bodies naturally have a capacity to release stress when we allow them to be vulnerable. That is, when we're feeling tension or emotional dysregulation, we allow our bodies to do what they would naturally do, which is to gently shake. You ever notice when you're nervous, your body, especially your hands maybe, might shake. Maybe if you're relaxed enough, you can go deeper into your body all the way down to your core. And that's what TRE, standing for tension and trauma releasing exercises, that's what that modality allows you to do, to reconnect to your natural capacity to shake and tremor and release what's going on in terms of stress energy stored as as tension. And so, by the way, trauma and tension are really the same thing neurologically, they're just on different ends of the spectrum. So whether you've had early childhood trauma like I had, or you have your everyday stresses of, let's say, work or, raising kids or whatever it is that is an outward source of stress, your body needs to be able to let that go in some form. And one of the things that we've learned in our culture, unconsciously, it's sort of conditioned into us, is that vulnerability is bad. Oh no, I'm weak because I'm showing vulnerability. And nothing could be further from the truth. Vulnerability allows us to connect with our sensations so that we can follow the sensations like an internal GPS. And it allows us to release the stress that's stored there. So I'm going to briefly model what TRE looks like. I'll get on the floor in a moment. But essentially what's happening is the 7 exercises that we do in class teach your body to come back into that space where deep in your hips, it's called your psoas muscle. It's a major part of what we might refer to as the gut brain. And when you have a gut feeling, when you're in front of somebody that you just have a sense, I can't trust that person. Maybe that signal is on, maybe it's off, but that sense in the gut is there regardless. Or you feel comfortable with someone. You can take a deep breath and sigh of relief. You feel that in your gut when you're in touch with it. And that's another thing that TRE does. But when those shaking tremor mechanisms happen in the body, primarily they're going to start in the psoas muscle, that deep muscle that goes underneath your internal organs and in front of your spine. So it sort of acts when you're laying on your back as this internal muscular hammock to protect your organs from the bony parts of your spine, as well as sending a signal up the vagus nerve and lamina 1 of the spinal cord to the brainstem. And what happens there is when your body shakes, it's sending a signal up to let the brainstem know where you are on the curve and to go, oh, cool. From a high stress response where we're numb and shut down, the shaking takes us into mobilization again, to movement, so that we can come all the way down to safety. And so in a moment, I'm going to model what that looks like. But essentially what's happening is when we first come out of numbness and not being able to feel, that shaking can feel scary at first. But this modality of TRE is to teach us to feel into, oh, my body's just giving me a signal, a cue to allow me to follow how to release that all the way. I first need to become aware of it. I need to feel it fully. If I don't let myself feel it fully, guess what? I go right back up the stress response. I numb it out. Now, I might do that through distracting myself. Maybe I do that with drinking. A lot of addiction has to do with this process in the nervous system. It's not wanting to feel pain, right? But when you feel that pain and you allow your body to guide you, and you're actually able to be present with it, the result is you actually learn to bring yourself all the way through that into safety. And this is where our minds and our brains and our bodies and ultimately our nervous system function at its best. So I'm going to briefly show you what it looks like to go into a TRE neurogenic tremor. I have a mat set up here. So because I've practiced this for years, I'm able to elicit them right away. But generally, this is something that takes a little while to get the hang of. So I'm just going to position myself so my feet are a little closer than my knees. Oh, there we go. It started to shake in my hips. It's moving up my legs. Oh, it started to move into my torso. Oh, this is actually really nice. I know from my training, it might look unique, like, oh, wait, what's wrong? It feels so soothing and relaxing. I'd stay down here if I had more time. But what's happening here is the body is releasing tension that's stored. And when instead of our conditioned response to go, oh no, what's happening, what's wrong, if we just follow that, we're actually allowing our body to lead us back toward a healing space. So that's what TRE, tension and trauma releasing exercises, does on an unconscious level. I didn't make those tremors happen. They happened by themselves. I just elicited and allowed them. And so that would be unconscious release, whereas Tai Chi would be conscious release. And then we have the general framework, the map of how the brain works uniquely for you. And so we have group classes, we have individual work with both TRE and Tai Chi, as well as you can work with me one-on-one in brain health coaching to help find your unique brain type and to find balance and the map that works best for your territory. So if you have any more questions, feel free to contact me on airmidwellness.com. Thanks for watching.